Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com.
Welcome to episode 17.
Here we go with another episode of Let's Be Well Together podcast. And Sammy, I want to talk a little bit about active listening because it's something that we've mentioned several times, but we haven't actually gone through some of the practical things people do as active listening. And it stemmed from, I follow the Mental Health Commission of Canada on Instagram, and they talk about 3 active listening tips. And 1, take yourself out of the equation. 2, use feeling words. 3, don't try and fix it. And they end by saying real empathy never begins with at least.
Yeah. And reading that too, it really brings me to this TED Talk by Brené Brown. And she does a really good job at explaining empathy versus sympathy. And that empathy is really doing those things, being there and active listening, versus sympathy is saying, at least your son is still doing well in school, just trying to find the positive in your pain. And it doesn't make the person who is expressing themselves to you feel like they're being heard or listened. They're just like, okay, this person just wants to fix my issues. And sometimes you don't need that. You just want someone to say, yeah, it's really hard right now. And I'm here for you. Like, what can I do to help?
And that takes us all the way back to our first episode. And that's why this struck me when I looked at it, is because you talked about toxic positivity and at least you still have a job and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I have taken that course on mental health first aid. And so I know some of the things related to active listening, but when it said use feeling words, I wasn't quite sure what that meant. So then I went and did a bit of a search and I found something from brightfutures.org. That's the website address. And they were talking about how to talk to someone who's really angry and kind of a calming technique. But what I thought was neat was a lot of the things they talked about for active listening tie in with these main messages. So taking yourself out of the equation, what I see that as being is you're suspending judgment.
Yes.
One of the things they see here too, which I think ties into what you were just talking about, is commit yourself to calming the other person. I think that has more to do with the empathy side of it. Yeah,
I agree. And I feel like suspending all judgment is really hard for our society because people love to judge others. And, when you can kind of tell when you're telling someone your issues and what's going on in your life, you can tell when it's someone who's like truly listening and being there for you versus someone who's kind of judging you a little bit, where they're like, oh, well, like, why'd you do that? Like, why didn't you approach it this way?
Right.
And just kind of making you feel bad about the situation, which I don't think ever helps.
That's why I think it's kind of taking yourself out of the equation, because if you're in the equation, you're thinking, what would I have done in the same situation? And I better tell this person so next time they don't do the same thing.
Yeah, and
that's not what to do.
No, and that's really hard to do. And I catch myself doing that all the time. Like, oh, I wish this person would just do it this way, because if they did it this way, their life would be so much better. But really, like, you only know what's best for yourself, and you don't know what's best for the other person. So yeah, the best way to I would agree is just kind of taking yourself out of the equation, listening, and really listening, not to listen to respond, but listen to like react almost and be there. But a lot of people always listen just to respond. Like, what can I say after this that's going to continue the conversation? Yeah,
and jumping to the end first, because I think it just fits in well. It ends in this other article from brightfutures.org by saying, don't try and fix it.
Right.
That's not really your role. And it's something we talked with Julie about too, about mental health first aid. We're not professionals. We flip over to the next section, couple quick tips to read from taking yourself out of the equation and starting off. It says be as relaxed as possible and display an open style of body language. And the examples it gives are keep your arms at your sides rather than crossed on your chest, uncross your legs, and use positive facial expressions. So those are nice practical tips to try and keep in mind.
For sure, yeah.
The next thing on this list is to acknowledge the importance about what the other person is saying. And for example, one way to do that is to actually make eye contact. And instead of not listening and saying what you think, instead of that, why not try saying, tell me more?
Right. Yeah. And I, for my own personal life, like when I'm having a conversation with someone and they're not making eye contact or they're looking at their phone or kind of like even browsing over your head, looking what's going on elsewhere in the room, like that's fully a trigger for me where I get so mad. I'm like, why, am I not good enough for this conversation? And it makes me almost get into my own head. So I'd say like make eye contact is so important when having like these important conversations with people within your circle.
It's amazing how everything ties together, because it reminds me too, we had a discussion another time about you have to be ready to hear the person. So if you're not in the right frame of mind, ask them to give you a bit of time before you talk. Yeah. Do whatever you need to do. Look at your phone, deal with it.
Yeah.
But once you start the conversation, if you think somebody's at all hurting, okay, now's when you're connecting with them.
For sure. And I actually just this morning was watching a TikTok, and it was this girl saying some things that she was working on with her best friend on how to make sure that they're maintaining a positive relationship. And one of the things is anytime, when you come into your house, sometimes you just want to like vent to your partner or to your best friend and just tell them everything that's going wrong today. But what they do, they go to each other and they say, I really want to vent right now. Do you have space for me to do this right now? Or like, some past traumas came up today. Do you have space for me to process this and work through this issue? And I thought that was a really cool way of kind of just addressing the situation, saying, this is what's going on in my life. Do you have space? Can we talk about it? If not, let me know when you can. Or
that's a great point. I think it comes into play with relationships a lot too, couples, because it's happened many times, and it could either be Sheila coming home or I'm coming home. But whoever of us was out just had a hell of a day.
Yeah.
Really stressful, really problematic, a lot going on. And finally feel like, okay, now I can come home. Phew. You walk in the door and you're immediately hit by this laundry list of all this crazy stuff that happened, and you need to make immediate decisions, and
right.
You want your head's going to explode, and not surprisingly, sometimes leads to tension. So that's a really good point you make.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one that ties in just before I move on, as part of acknowledging the importance, you said that it's frustrating if people aren't making eye contact because it's not like they're not there. One of the things you're trying to do is actually show concern for the other person's needs.
Right.
You can't do that if you're not making eye contact. And
if your head is elsewhere.
Under listen actively, a few of the things they say here: let the other person voice their feelings. Listen for the information the other person is sharing, and don't interrupt. Just listen. Yeah. Because you'd be amazed at what you hear. Yeah,
I agree. And listening to the full story before asking questions, I think, is so important. And when I was taking my mediation course at University of Waterloo, it was very much that, where you kind of had to listen to two sides and then you had to ask questions. And I find sometimes people will jump in the middle and be like, oh, well, what about this? And sometimes if you just continue to listen, that question might be answered later on. And if it's not, then you can ask your questions.
And we talked about this on the mental health first aid training side. One of the lessons we were told is it's not so much that you deal with what they're saying, but that you're there for them to talk to you. Exactly. And if you interrupt them, it throws them off.
It does, yeah.
And they might have had something that they wanted to say in a certain order, and you throw them off. So whether it's cross-examining them or asking them for clarification, all those things can throw the person off and disrupt that active listening process.
For sure, yeah.
Moving on, and this is where use your feeling words comes in, which I wasn't sure kind of what that meant on the post I saw.
Right.
It was under the category of make sure you understand. So things that are helpful, you let the person talk, and when there's an appropriate gap, you clarify and summarize what you're hearing, their concerns, and you're using feeling words. Feeling words are you're feeling this and that, as opposed to you trying to say what should be happening to them.
Right.
Or what they should do next.
Yeah. So it would be like, I see that you're feeling angry or you're feeling upset right now, versus being like, you seem really upset. Is that kind of the idea?
Kind of. And the other thing that's not on this list but ties in is, let me take an extreme example. Let me take somebody who's schizophrenic, for example. And they're telling you a story about how they just can't relax because all day this person beside them has been talking to them and harassing them and saying bad things to them.
Right.
And they just won't stop. And, part of you wants to say, there's nobody sitting beside you. Nobody is saying anything. But
Right.
if you're listening, what you could say in that context is, so what I'm hearing you saying is that you're hearing these voices and that person's very stressed out and you're feeling a lot of anxiety and you're feeling threatened. And
right.
the next point is kind of normalizing that by saying something like, if I were in your shoes, if I was hearing that, if I was feeling that, I would also feel very stressed out.
Right.
So there's a combination of expressing feeling, trying to explain what they're feeling. And there's a bit of a normalizing process going on where instead of saying, you're not normal, you're saying, if I was in your position and those things were happening to me, I would feel that way and so would other people.
Right. Yeah. Creating like you're relating to the person.
Right. And then, hopefully there's a connection where they feel like you've understood them.
Yeah.
So that's as far as we'll go for today, just that active listening side. There's other things that you can do later. I just talked about an extreme scenario.
Right.
But for the most part, active listening isn't part of an extreme scenario.
Yeah.
You're talking to your friends. You're talking to someone in your family. And that process of active listening helps for good conversation.
For sure. And I think one other point that is in my head is something else from that same TikTok video where they also said after someone is talking to you and kind of explaining what's going on, instead of right away jumping into, trying to fix it or telling them like, oh, that sucks or that's not fun, whatever, not really caring, is asking the person like, how can I support you in this situation? Because sometimes people just want to be heard. Sometimes they just don't feel heard during the day, but sometimes they actually do want you to sit down with them and kind of make a game plan on how can I move forward from this issue. And I think that's a good way to also approach it.
Yeah, and that's a great way to finish off. It also ties in with something Beth Beatty said on the first interview, where she said, if you think that somebody needs some help or needs something, why don't you ask them what they need as opposed to you assuming what you think they need?
Yeah.
Okay, well, those are some, we've talked about and we will talk about active listening regularly, and maybe we'll come back to this. But for today, those are some kind of overview points on techniques for active listening. Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of physical wellness, and it also shows the strength of human spirit. I'm speaking with Ruby Konkol, a realtor who I met in Collingwood, Ontario. He's a sales representative with Royal LePage Locations North. And while chatting, we discovered a shared interest in physical wellness and a sense that we need to make the most of every moment. I learned that Ruby battled inflammatory bowel disease, called IBD, and more specific, severe ulcerative colitis, beginning in 2000. He suffered constant and severe abdominal pain, dehydration, extreme weight loss, and bowel incontinence. He was hit so hard that he ended up extremely weak and alone on his couch or bed. Ruby felt isolated and hopeless and couldn't imagine a life without pain and suffering. All activity proved impossible. He avoided contact with other people and questioned his will to survive. In 2011, he underwent surgery to have his colon removed. He continued his journey with IBD, and it was extremely challenging. But it was also a period of incredible personal growth. He came close to death multiple times. He didn't expect to survive, but found internal strength to continue. Shortly following his fourth colitis-related operation, he trained for and successfully completed the Canadian Ski Instructor Certification Program. He joined Collingwood Toastmasters and eventually became its president. He survived the debilitating disease and learned to uncover hidden strength. His experience taught him what we can achieve with the right attitude and awareness. He believes that his life today is better than ever. Why? Because of his struggles with IBD and what he learned about himself. Welcome, Ruby.
Thank you.
I'd like to start, if I can. Eventually, we're going to talk about some initiatives that you're involved with that's going to help people who suffer from IBD and related diseases. But let's start, if I can, by you sharing a little bit about your experience so that the listeners can get a better sense of it.
Thank you, John. My experience, my journey with Crohn's and colitis started about 22 years ago when I was having some bowel incontinence. And when I went to see a doctor, I was told that I had diverticulosis, which I never heard of before. Diverticulosis is it's like pockets in the intestines. Okay, that it's basically like ulcers. That eventually led to colitis. And when I was told that I had a mild case of colitis, I asked the doctor, "What is colitis?" My point is that here I am, an educated individual, understanding what different diseases are, and I had never heard of colitis. It's really amazing, even today, how little knowledge that the general public has about these debilitating diseases. Anyway.
Can I just jump in on that because I don't know much about it? Can you just give me a sense of how prevalent it is? How many, for example, how is it something that many Canadians encounter?
I think currently, statistically, 1 in 100 people have colitis or know someone that has colitis close in the family. It is really prevalent. But that's one of the unfortunate things about this particular disease, because it's bowel incontinence. People don't like to talk about it because of what it is. And excuse me for this pun, if you want to call it that, I don't give a shit.
Right.
I'll talk about this. I don't go out of my way to speak about it because everybody has their issues. But if somebody asks me about it, I will go into conversation with it and explain what it is. And also, people know that I am available for those that are going through this, maybe at the beginning stages, if they want to speak to someone that has gone through it very seriously, and as you mentioned, almost died a few times, and to help them to understand what they're doing and what they're going through and what the different possibilities are moving forward. There was one lady I helped a little while ago, a number of years ago. She absolutely did not want to have an operation to remove her colon because, like myself, I felt that if I have a colon, there must be a reason for it. So if I have it removed, then, how can I possibly function? Which is a very interesting point, because as a result of that attitude that I had, I waited much too long before I had the operation to have my colon removed. I waited an extra 1.5 years because I looked for alternate means to deal with it unsuccessfully. And as a result of waiting, I kept on getting consistently worse and worse and worse, up to a point where I think about 10 years ago or 11 years ago, I had, during a period of 18 months, 10 double blood transfusions. Now, the reason for the blood transfusion is because when you have colitis, you're losing a lot of blood, okay? And blood it's also, your health is measured by the iron that you have in your blood. And my level dropped significantly, where people were they were surprised that I was able to function. The problem was that every time I had a blood transfusion, within a couple of days, I lost almost all the blood. And after, I guess, about 18 months, that last blood transfusion, because all the veins in my arms had collapsed, I had to have the transfusion in my neck. That's the only vein they were able to find. And the doctor leveled with me. He said, "You can't continue like this, because basically, if you continue like this, you're going to be dead. You've got to have your colon removed." And finally, I did. And generally, because it is so prevalent, you have to wait generally about 1 year to have this operation. My GI specialist, when I finally came in, said, "Yeah, I'm ready to have this operation." She looked at me. I was totally gray. I was ashen. She says, "We're getting in here next week."
Just if I could just touch on that for a minute. It's not directly connected, and you may not have heard some of our other interviews, but we interview people in all different areas, including mental health and other things, where we keep hearing a repeated message, and it's one that you seem to be saying, which is there's a reluctance to talk about certain topics that relate to physical and mental health. Maybe because it's uncomfortable, maybe because there's stigma and stereotypes associated with it. But it's really important for people to start normalizing the discussion on all sorts of topics. And it sounds like this is one of them, because if I'm hearing you right, either the unknown relating to colon removal operations because it's something people don't like to talk about, or the discomfort with talking about it, it was an issue for you that you had to confront and overcome.
I suffered for 1.5 years, in a sense, and I'm going to explain why I'm saying in a sense, needlessly. Because if I had the operation when I was told to have it, I wouldn't have gone through what I did. But on the flip side, because of what I went through, and I was able to survive, not only survive, to thrive, less than 4 months after my last serious operation, I became certified as a ski instructor. So I almost feel sometimes that I had a particular mission and purpose in my life. And it took this debilitating disease for me to burn out all this illusion that I had about life. For example, I didn't think I had very many attachments. I didn't think I was afraid of very many things. Believe me, when I was in the hospital, almost dying, it hit me in the face. I realized how many attachments I had and how many fears I had. I worked through them. And you mentioned in the introduction, my introduction, that I became certified as a ski instructor, and I became, after a while, I got involved with Toastmasters and became president. And I often wondered, what is the connection here? Like, why did I go through all of this? And I finally realized that silver cord that connects all of it is giving back. If I hadn't gone through this experience, I wouldn't be giving back. And I give back a lot. Like, I really enjoy teaching ski instruction because I enjoy watching people excel when I help them. I'm also, aside from that about giving back, I've been assisting the Gutsy Walk, Crohn's and Colitis for the last 8 years, raising money. And one of the things I'm most proud of is I've raised over $20,000 for this really important cause. But speaking about money is actually, raising money is a secondary aspect. We've spoken about this before. What's really important is finding ways to raise the awareness of this debilitating disease. Because if we're successful as a society to raise the awareness, the money will come. The money is not going to come if people don't know that it exists. So people have to talk about it, and they have to become open with it and realize there's not a stigma. And I'll tell you something else that really blew me away. I didn't realize it before I was sick because I never confronted it. The difficulty sometimes of using washrooms. Like when you have severe ulcerative colitis, you're having like maybe 25, 30 bowel movements a day. You need a washroom. And when you need the washroom, you need a fast because you don't have the luxury of waiting. Your body won't hold it. And the flock that I got in restaurants or in places to use a washroom, sorry, we don't allow the public to use this. And it still happens today. And actually, because of COVID, it was worse because of COVID, companies decided that they're not going to allow people to use the washroom, or legislation didn't permit it. So that's another thing about raising awareness, the importance of what people need, among other things, to access to washrooms. And it's things like if you're not suffering from disease or you're not close to someone who is, you don't realize how important that aspect is to have that ability to be able to use a washroom. In fact, I know for a fact a lot of people don't venture out of their house very long because they're afraid they're going to have a bowel accident because they're not going to be able to find a washroom, or they won't be able to use a washroom. Hopefully
we can start to get that message out, including through our listeners. But part of it is fundraising, and we do have a limited time, unfortunately, and we're flying through it. Can you tell us a little kind of specifically about what is the Gutsy Walk? When is it this year? What cities is it in? But also I want to just talk about how people can sponsor, how people can help and volunteer. And if they happen to be listening to the podcast after the walk, which is coming up in the not too distant future, how they can help in years to come.
Okay, good question. So with regards to accessing the Gutsy Walk site, and the Gutsy Walk is taking place Sunday, June 5th, all one has to do is put into Google or any other search engine a Gutsy Walk. Okay, it'll come up. And then if you want to donate to me on behalf of the walk, you simply go to participants, I think it is. It's fairly straightforward. And then you could just type my name in, like my first name, R-U-B-Y, or my last name, K-O-N-K-O-L, and my personal page will come up. That's one way. Another way is you can access it by the city. And in answer to another question, it's happening from coast to coast.
That's great.
From Vancouver all the way to, I'm not sure about Newfoundland, but certainly in the Atlantic provinces. It's massive. And I think, I'm not sure how much money was raised last year, but I think over the last 10 or 15 years, about $40 or $50 million has been raised through the Gutsy Walk for Crohn's and colitis. And all the money goes to research, no administration.
That's amazing.
What people are concerned about, because they donate money and the money goes to pay for salaries. It's not the case in this particular case.
Okay, so everybody have a look for the Gutsy Walk in your area. If you know people in it, sponsor them. If you don't know people in it, sponsor Ruby Konkol. Look them up. That's fantastic. And so just before I turn to the question I ask every guest, Ruby, I don't want to leave you hanging. Is there anything else that you wanted to chat about, either from your experience or the messaging that you want to get out there?
In our society, people are suffering from many different aspects, not necessarily disease, but for example, what you're dealing with, Let's Be Well Together. It could be psychosomatic, it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be psychological issues, and they're all tied together. But with respect to Crohn's and colitis, I would urge people to go on to the Crohn's and colitis website and to learn about it, because the infliction is unbelievable. And I'm not sure what the reason is, but it seems like the percentage of people being afflicted by Crohn's and or colitis is increasing on a yearly basis. And it's really important for people to have that understanding. It's important to have that understanding, not only to have empathy, but to do their part to ensure that people that are suffering from Crohn's and colitis have access to simple things like washrooms. Yeah, just be empathetic to what people are going through, because it is a debilitating disease, and it is a disease, and it can be treated. But just as treatments are important, being there for people that are suffering from the disease is just as important, to know that others care.
Well, I'm glad I had a chance to have you on, because honestly, I didn't know much about it. And so I will start to learn a little bit more about it. And I appreciate all that information. So heading into the end of the interview, you may, if you're listening, you may know that I ask all guests the same two questions. And this is a show about wellness and how we're all trying to juggle different areas of wellness in our life and trying to achieve that elusive balance. We all struggle to a degree. And so here's the question I ask. If you think about your own life and different areas of wellness, can you think of an area right now that you're faltering on a bit? And if so, can you imagine one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
Well, actually, there's two things that come to mind. The first thing is, I used to be better at this. It's my diet, being careful what I eat, because that has a major effect. And the other thing is, taking one step back from the diseases, psychological, mental, emotional, physical, is having a healthy attitude. Being open, acknowledging. So in my particular case, I think I've been able to not only survive, but thrive because of my attitude. Acknowledging these things that are afflicting me, but at the same time, not allowing it to stick to me, not being defined by it. I think that's a big one. Don't let, whether it's colitis or anything you're going through, serious marital aspects, don't allow it. Do your best not to allow it to define you. Deal with it. Accept it. Don't pretend it's not there. It is there. Accept it. Be open to it. And it's, from my experience, it's amazing how things come together when you have the right kind of attitude.
One of the messages we're trying to get across, and we talk about almost every show, is self-awareness and trying to figure out what it is that's happening in your life at this moment that's either causing you trouble or that you need to fix or that you're enjoying and you want to continue. So I really like your message there, which is, kind of recognize what's going on and confront it, as opposed to not recognizing it and let it eat away at you. Ruby, thanks very much. It was great having you on, and I look forward to speaking with you again sometime.
Thank you, John.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of the Adventures of the Starving Artist. This past week, I managed to wrap up two pretty significant projects that I've been working on. The first one, you might remember, my bandmate Eric is working on a solo album, and a little while ago, he had asked me to do some choir writing for 4 of his tunes. So I got that all finished and sent off the notation and the audio references, and they got a choir together this past weekend and recorded it all, which means hopefully before too long, we get to hear it all come together. I'm not quite sure when it's going to be released yet, but I'll keep you in the loop. It was a neat project for me because I haven't done much choir stuff since I was last in a choir, which was in college years ago now, like 5 years ago. I think I was last in a choir. But it is funny how you keep the ear for it, and it all worked out. On the writing side, these 4 songs were so different from one another that the choir had a different role in each. 2 of them, it was a little more backgroundy and supportive. And then the other 2, it takes more of a front seat at times. So it was neat. I got to write, texture-y parts and some more driven focal point parts. Very, very fun. I'm excited for you to hear it. And like I said, I'm excited to hear it all come together too. The other project I got to wrap up this week is the jingle that I've been working on with Tim and JC. We had our last version sent off to the client for review, and they liked it, so it was green lit, and off we go. The last step on our side of things was to take that version and do a few variations. So it was initially a 30-second thing with vocals at the beginning and the end. So we had to do 2 other 30-second versions, one that had vocals only at the end, and then one that was entirely instrumental, and then 60-second versions that had all those same variations. So we got those recorded, mixed, mastered, and sent off, which is really exciting. The last step in this process is for the client to do their talking parts on top, and then it goes on the radio, which means I think I can tell you what it's for now. If you happen to live in the Cambridge, Ontario area, and you're listening to the radio in the near future, keep your ears open for ads from Cambridge Ford. And if you hear an upbeat, ska-inspired jingle, that was us. I'd be interested to hear what you think. We think it's a really fun one, and we had a lot of fun making it. That's pretty much all I've got for you this week. Just a quick wrap on wrapping up some projects. I'm looking forward to what comes next. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing and enjoy the show, please spread the word about us. Connect with us on social media. Follow our Instagram account. It's at lets.be.well.together. Please also subscribe to us and rate us on your favorite podcast platform.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
And here we are. We have a new guest for our Move That Body. We thought we'd introduce a few other people to give some input on their exercise habits. So we have Elise here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Elise.
It's so funny. I've been in this physical space like a million times.
Yes.
But being on the podcast kind of feels special.
I know. When she heard the music, the introduction, she started giggling.
I did.
She's like, oh my gosh,
It's
I'm
real.
actually. So here you are. So we are going to talk about.
On-demand fitness classes.
So is this something you have to buy, or is it something that you just...
So I do buy it. So it's a year-long subscription.
Okay.
You can also pay monthly. There's a wide variety of programs available online. I know a lot of people from my workplace have started with Beachbody, it's called.
Okay.
So it's a program where you have videos that you move along with, and it makes me laugh because I think about, those infomercials from when I was a kid in the
Jane
90s.
Fonda.
Yeah. And I always remember watching those infomercials thinking, that's so silly. Like, that looks ridiculous. And now I'm totally into it.
So
I'm one of those people.
that are doing it. And well, because you can do it anytime you want,
Yeah.
and you just follow on your computer.
Yeah.
And how long are they?
So the program that I use varies from express classes, so like 10 minutes.
Okay.
And I think the longest they typically have are an hour, but you can always do back-to-back classes.
Right.
And what I like about this particular program is they have live or on demand. So you can tune in for a live class and they'll give you shout outs throughout the class.
So they can actually see you?
No, so they don't
Okay.
see my webcam, but they can see that Elise has signed in. So they'll say, hey, Elise, welcome to the class. And we're so excited, or keep going, Elise, you're doing great, things like that. So it makes you feel like it's more interactive and you're actually there.
That is really crazy. But they are actually doing it live, and you can see them live talking to you?
Yeah.
Going, hey, Elise. Because that's crazy, because I know when I'm doing anything live, It's really hard to see all that screens and everything scrolling down, you know?
Yeah, I think they have technology set up. There's some kind of teleprompter that shows them the people, and it'll also show them if you have a milestone class, so they know when your birthday is. So if you're doing a class on your birthday, they'll give you a shout out. They know if you've done a milestone class like 100, 500. There's even been people who've done their 1,000th class, so they'll get a shout out for that. So that's pretty amazing.
1,000th class. That's a few years in,
it's
you know?
It's years.
Yeah.
So I like that it has the live option, but it also has all of them pre-recorded.
Right.
Well, I guess not pre-recorded, but you can watch the live classes later. They call it replay.
Right.
And then they also have a variety of pre-recorded classes. So this particular program is based out of New York. So they pride themselves on having the best instructors of New York. So you know that they're good.
The best people live in New York.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's interesting because all of the classes I tend to look at their bios, the teachers' bios.
Yeah.
And it'll say things like Broadway dancer, ballet trained dancer. And I think, that's my upbringing. I love dance classes. So this must be why I love these particular classes. And they also offer weight training programs.
Okay.
So currently I'm working through one of their weight training programs, which is great. I had to purchase weights in order to do it.
Yeah.
But you can find a lot of great exchangeable weights on Amazon. So it doesn't take up a lot of space.
Well, and at least as a woman, I find that we don't go up past 25. Like
exactly.
You know, you only need like 5, maybe 5, 7. Like you need a few in there, you know, like the 5, the 7, the 10, the 12, like those. And then maybe 15, 20, like that's it. So
I really like them because I like to work out in the mornings. I love the gym. I love to go to the gym, but going to the gym in the morning is really tough because you have to bring everything with you to take a shower. Yeah. And it's that extra time, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. That's an extra half hour that you have to wake up.
Yeah.
Whereas for these on-demand classes, I can just roll out of bed. I'm downstairs in like 3 minutes. I have my coffee going while I'm working out. I typically do 30 minutes or an hour. And then I'm ready to drink my coffee right after the workout. I feel great. And after school, I don't feel guilty. I'm a teacher. I teach kindergarten. I'm on my feet a lot. I'm running with the kids. I'm hiding with the kids. I'm sitting on the carpet with them. So I come home and I'm pretty physically tired.
Yeah.
So I find if I start my day with a workout at home, I just feel so much better about my day.
Yeah. You can enjoy the rest of your day because you're like already done that part.
Yeah. And it gives me a reason to get up, something I'm looking forward to get up for.
Yeah.
So I find it just works a lot better than the gym. It's easy to hit that snooze button because you're like, I don't want to have to drive to the gym. It's so cold and dark.
It's raining out.
Yeah, there's a lot of excuses that I can make up when it's just downstairs. I just roll out of bed, I do it, and I feel so much better.
Okay, and did you say how much they cost?
So this particular program that I use, it's $99 for the whole year was the deal that I got, and it was on sale.
Okay.
So it worked out to be a great price. I know if you want to try it, I tried it for $2 for 2 months.
Wow.
And then after that, you can continue.
And I'm sure there's lots, and I'm sure you can do
so many. If you go online and you look, there's lists like blogs with lists of different programs and why they might work for you. So it's great to just go online and see what's available. I know a lot of people aren't really open to going to the gym. I hear that people say, I'm too self-conscious.
Yeah.
I don't want people looking at me.
Yeah.
Whereas this gives you a great way to work out at home.
And also COVID conscious still, right? Like you're like, there's a lot of people using the machines and just a lot of people in there and you're all breathing heavy, right? So you're worried about that still. So this is a great option. And I find just online generally has exploded since COVID. Like there's so many more options and so much that you can do. It's really cool.
Yeah. And I love that the teachers are great because sometimes I go to classes and I have experience as a teacher, but also as a dance teacher like you. And sometimes I go to classes and I think, I could have done that better. I could have taught that better.
You could explain that. Could have done this. Yeah.
And so you go into these classes and these are the best of the best.
Yeah.
So you really come away with great classes and they're very motivational. So they talk a lot about overall wellness and it's not all push.
Yeah.
They're talking about really connecting with your body. And there's also meditation videos as well as yoga. It offers a wide variety of programs that you can choose from. So it really is great for all people.
Wow. That's awesome. Okay. There you go. So on-demand video workouts. Give it a try. Thanks, Elise.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. Dreamers and triers. There's the thought. And excuse me if I've got a bit of the sniffles. I sat down to record this as soon as I got back just because I didn't want to forget. Dreamers and triers. I think those are my peeps. That's the group I fall in and what's the context. So a lot of us who've tried to turn something around. So in my case, I never paid attention to physicality. And, a big part of my story is that I finally realized that I did have to turn things around. I finally faced that. But lurking in the background for a long time, I knew I had to face that. And I at least had this little dream, this little hint of a dream in the back of my head that I could. And for a long time, it just sat there. I didn't deal with it. But fortunately for me, it never went away. And then starting probably years, if not decades after I should have started dealing with it in 2006, I did try and start to deal with it, and I had great success and thought I'd turn things around. That mostly with my weight at the time. I hadn't really started running yet to any degree. But as life goes, things turned around, and it's not a straight line, and I had pretty major setbacks, and it wasn't long before I was heavier than I ever had. But again, that dream stuck in there, and I tried again. And my story is of one of somebody who tried again. Didn't work, fell back, still had the dream, tried again. And eventually I'm at a place where I feel a lot better, and I'm hoping this time I can stay at the right place. But more than anything, I hope I never lose that little dream, because it was enough to turn me around and dream and try and dream and try and keep trying. And our club is as varied as you can imagine. I'm talking about the context of trying to get in shape, but there's people out there with a dream who are trying to maybe stop taking drugs or stop drinking or try and figure out how they can better deal with their anxiety or depression, or maybe they're trying to connect with, a different social group, or they're trying to get better at something, whether it's art or some other thing. There's just so many things, and where we can try and have a setback, but hopefully keep that dream alive. So if you're one of us, if you're in our group, if you're one of the dreamers and triers, don't give up. And if you happen to be in one of those dark spots, hopefully that little flame keeps alive, and we'll keep dreaming and trying and dreaming and trying. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
It's another week, and it's been a good one. Now, just to remind people, we often tape our segments months in advance. That's the way we can make things work for us in terms of busy lives. So I'm not sure when this one will go out, but timing it was a little while after I had COVID and Sheila had COVID. We were fully healed. You have a bit of a window at that point where you can't either get COVID or give COVID. In any event, that's all a side issue. The main issue is we had our first friends over dinner party in I don't know how long, and it was amazing, and it just felt so great.
Yeah, it was really, really great. We had, because it was the first time we had people over, we did have a lot of work to do. Like, you got to prep everything for, make the house look good, but it just so happened that it was spring, so we also had to work on the garden really quickly and get everything looking nice, and the pool, which I don't know why it's so important to make sure everything is, nice and neat, because they didn't even look at the front, or, you know what I mean?
It's one of those things, though. You don't do it for this reason, but when you have people over, it is a kick in the butt to get things looking good and get things ready.
Yeah, it was.
But it was just the most amazing thing was, we do all this work, and everything did work out. We got it all done.
All done.
All of a sudden, people were here. We were sitting in our backyard. It was so comfortable. And there were actually people. Like, we were actually talking to people about stuff and people we hadn't seen.
In our house.
A couple people we were just meeting, and just amazing.
Yeah, it was really great, especially because we haven't seen, like, some of them we haven't seen in a long time, like a really long time, before COVID, I think.
I decided to make burritos. I like making, I have a few Mexican recipes I can do, and they're more traditional type flavors.
And particularly, this was John's kind of dinner party. These were his guests, so he cooked the dinner. So
and so it's typical day. You wake up. It was a Saturday. You wake up in the morning. Okay, let's do our to-do list.
Yeah.
And there was lots to do. I also had to renew my driver's license and this.
That he thought he could do online, but he couldn't.
I couldn't. So we had a million things to do, but we got our to-do list and we're doing them, and everything was going pretty well. Like, we were busy, working.
Well, for me, everything was awesome. Like, I had a good 2 hours.
Yeah.
Left.
I got back from the Service Ontario for the driver's license and a few runs to a bunch of grocery stores. And I was sitting there and it was probably, I don't know, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and people were coming over at 5:30. And I know it doesn't take a ton of time to get this food ready. I was also making some rice that...
It does take a ton of time.
Well,
I don't think you realized how ton of time it takes.
Anyway, so Sheila said, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this at this time and this at that time, like kind of the 5 o'clock range. And Sheila's like, well, can't you be finished cooking by 5 so I can quickly do some dishes? And
I wanted the place cleaned up, but also I didn't want you cooking while the guests were here. Right? You can't cook and serve them and say hi.
But my plan was just to put in stuff in the oven between 5 and 5:30, not to actually cook. Like just to put anyway. So
didn't look like it to me.
So Sheila's like, well, and then she comes back like 2 minutes later. Would you mind at least trying to have everything ready? I'm like, yeah, okay. I'll see what I can do. I may as well just start now. So I started now, and at 5:25. We were just finishing some stuff.
Yeah, like he was literally finishing with a pot and I'd whip it up and clean it. And yeah, it was crazy.
So I'm like, maybe you're right. Maybe I should have started when you told me to start.
I wish you would just realize after how many years of marriage that I'm always right, John.
Yeah. And so then everything started going, it was going well. Everything did go well. And I just can't express how amazing it was later. You know, you've had some discussion and you had the food. And people were talking and new topics were coming up. And I was just sitting there. We have a nice big table because that's something that was important to me. When I was a kid, I used to kind of be squeezed in at a table all the time. So for our house, we have a table where you got lots of room. And I was sitting there. Everyone looked comfortable and the conversation was flowing. And I just felt like $1 million.
Yeah, it was great. It was really wonderful.
And there were a lot of smiles around the table about, I think, other people feeling the same way. Okay, well, I mean, that's all it was. It was just talking about how much fun we had and looking forward to more dinner parties.
And we're hoping you all have the same experience.
Yeah, low key. Like that, just before I leave, that was another point too. The people are like, what can we do? And we're saying, look, we just want company.
Yeah, we just want you to come.
This is not a fancy meal. It's a regular meal. And we focused on the company, and I'm looking forward to doing that a lot more times. Well, hopefully. I'm not a super social person, except for Sheila pushing me a bit.
Yeah, so you guys send in your requests.
Please remember, we're not providing advice. We're sharing our experiences and thoughts. We hope to inspire you to think about and foster wellness actively in ways that work for you. We try and get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or the things we talk about will work for you. We urge you to consult with qualified people when you need advice. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
So that is the end of our show. It's sign-off time. We have Sheila, Sammy, and John with us. So for me, I had a pretty busy week. It was gardening and working and nice long weekend and quite the storm, eh, guys? Oh my goodness. Did anyone have any damage at all?
I didn't have any damage that I saw. My boyfriend David, his umbrella kept flying around the backyard, so he was chasing that around all weekend. Yeah,
yeah. John was actually in the middle of the storm holding up. We have like an outdoor tent kind of canopy, and he was out there holding it up to make sure it wouldn't bend and blow away.
Yeah,
but we had, we could fix everything that fell over, and it was all good. So this week I'm actually going to start catering again on the weekend. Oh. So that's something that's going to start. I haven't been doing that since COVID. I'm going to be doing my usual biking to work and getting my workouts in and trying to eat well this week. And what about you, Sammy?
Yeah, I had a good week. I was catching up on a lot of work, which is always a nice feeling going into a long weekend. I went shopping yesterday for my trip, so I got some nice fun outfits.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and then I do have a funny story. So I was at Beer Town with my friends, and the guy ID'd us, which
that's exciting.
I am 27, so that was fun.
Yeah.
But then he took my ID and he looked at me and he said, "I'm sorry, I just don't take this as you." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
What do you do with that?
I was like, he didn't even ask for a second piece. He was just like, "I'm sorry."
He didn't believe that was you.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know how this makes me feel. If it's like a good thing that he thinks I'm younger, or if I just look way different than what I did when I was a cute 24-year-old.
So what did you do?
Well, my friends were like, "What?" And then he was like, "Oh, is it? Oh, sorry. And then just gave me back my ID and walked away. And then he did make eye contact with me for the rest of the dinner. I was like, he was very uncomfortable.
So it was the actual waiter that ID'd you.
Yeah, it was the waiter.
Oh,
Yeah.
As
my
opposed to
goodness.
like a door person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he wasn't young. Like, you know, he was, But I was like, I get it. I've been a server. It's hard to tell, but that is me. I just don't have fake eyelashes on anymore, you know? So, yeah.
Oh my
that was a
goodness.
fun
Yeah, that
little
is a
experience.
story to tell.
Yeah. How about you, John?
Well, that ties into one of mine. I'm going to talk about a few things, but one of them was, it was a long weekend here, and we went to Crazy Canuck and for Rusty Nail Comedy on Friday. It was amazing, and what ties in is there were 3 women sitting in front of us, and I said to Sheila, like, I'm getting so old. I have zero idea how old those 3 women are. Like, I just can't tell if they're 19 or 29. I just don't know.
And I
Hard
was
to
like
tell.
more like, I thought they were more like 15 to 21. Like they looked young. So
Yeah, so you're in the
Anyways.
same position.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. So we were always happy to go there. We saw Dave Martin, Dylan Gott, Matt Render, and some others. And it was hosted by Sandy McFarlane. It was amazing. I also I started training for my marathon, and I was a little nervous because I've been doing mostly just going out and just kind of clicking off the kilometers the last many months. So now I have to start including high intensity stuff. So that was Tuesday and Thursday. So I wasn't sure what happened, but it went great. And I remembered how energizing that is to include a little high intensity in the week too. So that was good. And lastly, we had this crazy storm. And now that Sheila mentioned it, it was pretty funny. I have this like 10 by 10 tent in our backyard, and it probably costs like $120. But I know that in this wind, it's going to blow away. So I'm out there holding it, and there's a couple pieces that are kind of coming apart a bit, but I'm holding them together. And then I'm thinking, is this $110
is it
worth
worth
it?
it?
I
Yeah.
mean, this might be a tornado or lightning. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did it anyway. But the main thing is we lost power for a long, long time. And so I just wanted to do a quick shout out to everybody at KW Hydro who was working so hard to get power back to so many people.
Yes.
It must have been a challenge. There was probably people who flew in or came in from all over other areas around here. So big thanks.
Yeah. Even when Costco is closed because of power, you know it's
Yes,
bad.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's it. So we're heading for another week. I was really busy at work, have another busy week coming up. So it's one nice thing that we tape our shows early because then we can all be busy, and Sammy soon will be taking a trip, and we can still keep the podcast going without going crazy ourselves.
So have a great week, everyone. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.